Darren Cole had spent most of his 26 years drifting between lonely space routes, repairing old cargo ships, and taking small escort missions no one else wanted. He wasn't famous, wasn't wealthy, and wasn't the kind of man who dreamed about meeting royalty. He simply liked quiet skies, old engines, and the peaceful feeling of hearing his ship breathe around him. His ship, the Skylark, was a small explorer-class vessel, one pilot seat, a narrow corridor, and a messy bunk room filled with spare tools. Darren lived simply, moving from one star system to another. Some days he carried messages, some days he delivered supplies, and some days he just searched the empty dark for something new. On this particular day, he wasn't searching for anything. He was simply passing through the Lorien Belt, a scattered field of asteroids glowing blue from reflected starlight. He hummed softly while adjusting a panel overhead. Everything was quiet, the kind of quiet he wished for more often. Then the silence broke. A beep echoed from his console, then another. Darren frowned and slid into the pilot's seat. A flashing red symbol appeared on the screen, a distress call. Weak, faint, almost broken, but definitely real. He leaned closer. "Who's out there?" he whispered to himself. The signal repeated, fragmented by static. "Help. Damaged. Life support. Please." His chest tightened. Many signals in space were traps, especially near borders between star kingdoms. Pirates often faked distress calls to lure ships. Darren knew this, but something in the signal felt different. Less like a trick, more like a desperate cry. He hesitated for only a moment. "All right, let's see who needs help." He activated the scanners. A small craft drifted inside a thick patch of asteroids, its structure flickering with failing power. The scanner read its signature, Aurelian Royal Shuttle. Darren froze. Aurelians were one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in this region of space. Their royal ships never traveled without escorts. If one was alone, injured, and sending a distress signal, something terrible must have happened. "Great," Darren muttered, "of all the people to rescue." But he couldn't ignore it. He tightened his seatbelt, pulled the control lever, and pushed his small ship into the asteroid field. Rocks drifted close, their shadows flashing across his cockpit. Some were small as pebbles, some large enough to crush him flat. Darren clenched his teeth and maneuvered between them, trusting his hands and instincts more than his autopilot. The damaged shuttle came into view, a beautifully shaped vessel of silver and crystal, but now cracked, smoking, and tilted sideways. A small spark flickered near its rear engine. Its lights were dim like a dying heartbeat. Darren activated his comm. "This is pilot Darren Cole of the Skylark. I received your distress signal. Do you copy?" Static answered him, then a faint voice. "Copy. Weak. Life support failing." A woman's voice, soft, shaking. "Hang on, I'm coming." He inched his ship closer, but suddenly a large asteroid rotated toward the shuttle. Darren's breath caught. If it hit, the shuttle would be crushed. "Not today," Darren whispered. He pushed the throttle and swung the Skylark forward, locking a magnetic tether onto the shuttle's hull. The asteroid's shadow grew larger, covering both ships in darkness. Darren pulled hard on his controls. His engines roared, metal strained. The tether glowed from the stress. For a moment he thought he would fail. Then, just in time, he yanked the shuttle free. The asteroid slid past them like a giant wall. It missed by meters. Darren exhaled loudly. Okay, we're safe. Sort of." He reeled the shuttle in and anchored it alongside his airlock. After sealing the connection, he rushed toward the docking door. His heart beat fast, not from fear, but from urgency. He pressed a button, and the door opened with a hiss. A cold wave of dim blue light washed over him. The shuttle interior was beautiful, despite the damage. Smooth walls like polished glass, glowing symbols, and silver railings shaped with care, but everything flickered, and in the middle of the floor, half collapsed, lay a figure. A woman. No, an Aurelian. Her skin was pale silver, almost glowing, with faint patterns of crystal blue lines traveling across her arms and cheeks. Long strands of luminous white hair fell over her shoulders. She wore a thin ceremonial cloak, torn and burned on one side. Her breathing was shallow. Darren knelt beside her. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered open. Her eyes were bright, almost star-like. "You're human," she whispered, confused. "Last I checked," Darren replied gently. "Let's get you out of here." She tried to sit up, but winced. A crack ran along her left arm. Aurelians had crystalline structures within their bodies, and cracks meant serious injury. He placed a hand behind her back. "Easy. Your life support is failing. My ship is safer." She didn't argue. She was too weak to. Darren lifted her carefully, feeling her trembling. She was warm, but her energy felt unstable, like a fading light bulb. He guided her through the docking tunnel into his ship. She looked around, surprised by the small space, the messy tools, the old blankets. But she didn't complain. He settled her gently onto the medical bunk. She watched him silently as he hurried to adjust the room's temperature and pull out his emergency kit. Her gaze was soft but intense, as if she was studying him closely. "You saved me," she whispered. "You called for help," Darren replied, opening the med kit. "I'm not the kind of person who ignores that." Her eyes softened even more. "That is unusual." "For a human?" Darren joked. "For anyone," she corrected quietly. He didn't know what she meant exactly, but her tone made him pause. He cleaned the cracked area on her arm. Aurelian physiology was different from humans, more energy-based, more delicate in some ways. He used a stabilizer spray to seal the fracture. The glow in her body brightened slightly. She took a slow breath. "That feels better." Darren smiled. "Good. I'm not a doctor, but I can fix engines and broken panels. Hopefully that includes royal aliens." She blinked. "You know who I am?" Darren shrugged. "I know your shuttle is royal. I don't know who you are." She looked surprised. Then she spoke softly. "My name is Soraya, Crown Princess of the Aurelian Empire." Darren froze with the spray still in his hand. Princess. Crown Princess. He had known she was important, but not this important. "Oh," he said finally. "That explains the shiny shuttle." To his surprise, she laughed, but only a little before wincing again. Darren finished stabilizing her wounds. Her breathing grew steadier, and the bright glow in her lines returned slightly. She looked stronger, though still exhausted. He offered her water. She accepted it with both hands as though it were precious. "Thank you," she whispered after drinking. "You risked your life in that asteroid field." "Why?" He sat on the edge of the bunk, rubbing his tired eyes. "Because someone needed help. That's it. I wasn't thinking about rewards or titles. He shrugged again. "I just did what felt right." Soraya stared at him for a long moment. Her glowing eyes didn't blink. "You are different." "Different how?" he asked, confused. "Humble," she answered softly, "and honest. Most beings run toward royalty for gain. You ran into danger with nothing to gain." "Maybe I'm just stupid," Darren said with a small smile. Soraya shook her head very slowly. "No, not stupid. Rare." He didn't know how to respond to that, so he stood and checked her vitals on the small screen again. "You'll be all right. Just need rest. We're heading to the nearest Aurelian border station." At the mention of returning home, a shadow crossed her face. "It might not be safe," she murmured. "What do you mean?" Darren asked. Soraya hesitated. My shuttle was attacked. Raiders, mercenaries. They tried to capture me. They planned to sell me to anyone willing to pay for influence. I escaped, but my ship was damaged. They may still be looking for me. Darren's jaw tightened. So they're still out there. Yes. He walked to the cockpit and checked the scanners again. No signs of pursuit, but the asteroid field blocked long-range detection. He returned to her bedside. You're safe here. I'll keep my ship hidden until we clear the belt. Then we'll go straight to Aurelian territory. Soraya looked at him, almost confused. You owe me nothing, yet you protect me as if you do. That's what people should do, Darren said simply. Help when they can. She closed her eyes, processing his words. You truly expect nothing for saving the heir of the Aurelian Empire? Darren chuckled and shook his head. No, I didn't even know you were an heir, and even if I did, I don't want anything. Just glad you're alive. Soraya's expression changed, very slowly, from confusion to something warmer, something like gratitude mixed with awe. She whispered, Then, you will be shocked when you learn how my people repay a life saved. Darren raised an eyebrow. I told you. I don't need a reward, Soraya whispered back, almost to herself. But the reward is not something you can refuse. Darren blinked. What's that supposed to mean? But Soraya didn't answer. She had already drifted into deep, exhausted sleep, her glowing patterns calming and steady. Darren adjusted her blanket, stepped back quietly, and looked down at her peaceful form. He had no idea that saving one life, her life, would change everything. And he had no idea that the prize she spoke of was nothing he could ever imagine. Darren Cole barely slept that night. The Skylark moved slowly through the asteroid belt, drifting between the dark rocks as silently as possible. He kept the lights dim and the engines low to avoid showing their position. Every hour he checked the scanners, hoping not to see any raider ships. Every hour the results stayed clear, but Darren knew danger could appear at any time. Princess Soraya slept deeply in the medical bunk, her breathing calm, her glowing lines steady. Sometimes she shifted slightly, whispering things in her own language. Once, Darren thought he heard her say a word that sounded like home, and another that sounded like father. He wished she could rest without fear. In the quiet of the ship, he sat in the pilot's seat and stared at the stars. Why me? He asked the empty cockpit. Why did I get mixed up with royalty? He didn't regret saving her. He would do it again. But now he carried a princess who was hunted by raiders. He had no army, no powerful weapons, no backup. Just a simple man with a simple ship, trying to keep someone alive. He rubbed his forehead. Great job, Darren. Rescue a princess. Get chased by criminals. Maybe spark a war. Perfect plan. Still, a small smile found his face. He didn't regret it. Something about Soraya made him feel responsible. Protective, not because she was a princess, but because she had looked at him with real trust. When she finally woke up several hours later, Darren heard soft footsteps behind him. He turned around and was surprised to see her standing, holding the wall for support. Her injuries were better, but still delicate. You should be resting, he said gently. Soraya tilted her head. Aurelians heal better when we move a little. Staying still for too long causes energy to slow. Well, don't slow too much, Darren replied, standing up to help her. Here. She placed her hand lightly on his arm. You worry about me as if we have known each other for years. Darren shrugged. You're my passenger, and you're hurt. Anyone would worry. Soraya looked into his eyes for a moment, searching. No, not anyone. He didn't know what to say to that. She sat in the co-pilot's seat and watched the stars drift past. The silence between them felt calm, not awkward. She seemed fascinated by the small human ship. This vessel is Humble, she said softly, running her fingers along the console. Humble is a polite word, Darren replied. I'd call it old and stubborn. She smiled. Old things have stories. Then this ship has too many. He pointed at a scorch mark. That's from when a pirate tried to steal my cargo. And that dent on the wall? From when I misjudged docking speed. Soraya laughed quietly, the sound bright and warm. You live dangerously. I live cheaply, Darren corrected. She kept her gaze on him for a moment, then looked back at the stars. After several minutes of calm, her expression shifted. Her voice lowered. We should talk about the raiders. Darren nodded. Tell me everything. Soraya took a slow breath. My shuttle was traveling alone toward a diplomatic station. It was supposed to be a peaceful route, but someone leaked my travel plan. A group of mercenaries attacked 6 ships, fast and heavily armed. They disabled my escorts and boarded my shuttle. Darren tensed. Did they hurt you? No, not physically. They wanted me alive. Her eyes dimmed. They planned to auction me to the highest bidder. Darren clenched his fists. That's horrible. Soraya nodded. I escaped using an emergency pod, but the raiders damaged it with a plasma blast. The controls failed, and I crashed into the asteroid belt. She looked down at her hands. I thought I would die there. Darren swallowed. Until I showed up. Yes. Her voice softened. You saved my life. Anyone would... No, she said firmly, shaking her head. Not anyone. That is why the prize of light must be prepared. Darren raised an eyebrow. You mentioned that again. What is this prize? Soraya hesitated. She looked uncomfortable, almost shy. My people have a law, a very old one. When someone saves a royal heir's life without asking for reward, the heir must give a prize that binds them forever. Darren blinked. Forever? That sounds serious. It is, she whispered. Too serious for this moment. When we reach the capital, you will learn everything. Darren sighed, confused. I told you, I don't need anything. Soraya smiled gently, her eyes glowing. That is the exact reason the prize must be given. Before Darren could ask more, the scanners beeped. The ship shook slightly. His heart jumped. What was that? Soraya sat straight. A disturbance? Darren hurried to the controls. The scanner showed a faint signal behind them. Slow but real. A ship just entered the asteroid belt, he said, voice tight. Soraya's face paled with concern. Can you identify it? Working on it. The signal flickered. For a moment it vanished. Then it reappeared, stronger. Darren zoomed in. It's a raider scout, he whispered. Small, fast, and scanning. Soraya looked at him, fear appearing in her glowing eyes. They found my energy trail. Darren's mind raced. We need to hide, now! He cut the engines and let the Skylark drift into the shadow of a large asteroid. He powered everything down, even the lights. The ship became a silent stone in the darkness. Soraya whispered, Will this work? It has to, he replied. For several long minutes they sat in complete silence. Only the faint hum of life support filled the air. Darren didn't even breathe loudly. Soraya closed her eyes, focusing her energy to dim her natural glow. Then the raider ship appeared on the screen, dark, sharp-edged, circling like a hungry predator. Darren watched it slowly pass by. Just keep going, he murmured to himself. The raider paused. Its scanner beams swept the area. It stopped dangerously close to their hiding spot. Soraya's hand tightened on her seat. They sensed something. Darren's heartbeat felt like thunder in his ears. The scanner beam passed over the asteroid. For a moment, they thought it had detected them. But then it continued moving. The raider hovered in silence, as if listening to the rocks themselves. Then, finally, the small ship turned away. It's leaving, Darren whispered. Soraya let out a shaky breath. Thank the stars. Darren waited a full 3 minutes before reactivating power. Then he slowly guided the Skylark out of the asteroid's shadow. That was too close, he said. Yes, Soraya agreed. But you acted wisely. Darren set a new course. We're almost clear of the belt. Once we're out, we'll jump to Aurelian space. Soraya touched her injured arm. And then, the Empire will reward you. Darren shook his head. I don't need rewards. Soraya looked at him with a soft, almost emotional expression. I know, and that is why the reward is unavoidable. They continued flying quietly. After nearly an hour, the asteroid field thinned. The stars opened wide around them. Darren finally felt the invisible pressure lifting from his shoulders. We're through, he said with relief. Soraya closed her eyes and breathed deeply. Then we are safe. For now. Darren activated the jump drive. Prepare for hyperspace. Soraya watched him with a thoughtful gaze. Darren, may I ask something? Sure. When you saw my shuttle damaged, why didn't you turn away? He looked at her, surprised by the question. Because someone was crying for help, and I couldn't just leave them. But you didn't know who I was. Didn't matter. Soraya's eyes shimmered. You remind me of an old legend from my people, a tale of a warrior with no crown who saved a queen and asked for nothing. He changed our history. That's just a story, Darren said with a small laugh. True, she murmured. But I wonder, are you another such human? He blushed slightly. I'm not a hero. She answered softly, Maybe you are, and you don't know it yet. Before he could reply, the jump drive activated, surrounding the ship with streaks of silver-blue light. They surged forward into hyperspace, leaving the dangerous asteroid belt behind. As the light stretched across the windows, Soraya leaned back and watched Darren secretly. Her expression was thoughtful, warm, almost certain. In her mind, she whispered a truth he didn't yet know. The prize of light binds two fates, and I have already chosen.